Protocol said stand down. She pulled the trigger anyway. If she touches that brimstone, she's off the mission. For good. That's what Commander Daxon Rourke said, seconds before the medic locked the bolt, took a breath, and fired into a kill zone swarming with hostiles. What do you do when protocol says stand down, but your gut says pull the trigger? Or they die. She wasn't cleared to shoot. She wasn't even supposed to be on that ridge. But when Falcon Spire went quiet, the Brimstone Mk.9 was already up there, perched on the ridge like a promise no one thought she'd touch. Aerin Voss dropped prone, dialed the scope, and made the shot that changed everything. Fort Ashara didn't look like much from the outside, just sun-bleached concrete. Radio masts, and rows of prefab units scattered across the northern Helix desert. Inside, it pulsed with tension, not from war, but from silence, the kind that settles when a base ignores its own ghosts. To most of the team, Specialist Aerin Voss was just the medic. 5'4", slight, soft-voiced, the one who handed out antibiotics and IV drips. To Commander Rourke, she was a discipline case waiting to happen. But buried deep in the classified records, buried deeper in her blood, was a name most of them had forgotten. Aerin Voss, her older brother, killed in an off-book black recon near the Arik line. A sniper, a legend. And, to those who knew better, a ghost. He never trained students, except one. Aerin had grown up in the forests of Verland province, where Arden taught her to track wind through pine needles and calculate drift using nothing but breath and heartbeat. But she'd buried all that when he died, or tried to, until the warning came. It wasn't on any secure channel. It came through a salvaged Spectralink terminal she'd rebuilt from drone scrap. The screen flickered once, then twice. Obsidian 9. Overwatch vulnerability detected. Tomorrow's route is compromised. Nullwind ravine exposed. Aerin froze. That message wasn't for her. It wasn't even addressed to anyone. But it matched the blind spot she'd seen on the ridge map. The one she wasn't supposed to be reading. And suddenly, the cold weight in her chest returned. The same one she'd felt in Kandahar, years ago, when she was ordered to wait for clearance and the Marine bled out before her hands ever touched him. The next morning, she tried. She approached Commander Rourke with caution, maps in hand, voice steady. "Sir, I believe Nullwind is a covered line of approach. The elevation on our overwatch," he didn't even glance up. "Your role is medical support. Specialist Voss. I don't need terrain analysis from a field medic." Dismissed. Her warning ignored. Back in her quarters, the Spectralink blinked again. A second message. Shorter, sharper, final, obsidian. "You're the only one who sees it. Act if they won't." She stared at the screen. Her pulse was steady, her breath slow. And somewhere in the corner of that dim little room, her brother's voice echoed in memory. "Precision is what remains, when chaos takes everything else." The message wasn't theoretical anymore. It was an accusation. Obsidian 9 Overwatch vulnerability confirmed. Grid 47.193N. 8.712E Nullwind Ravine. Enemy establishing firing positions. It landed on Aerin's screen like a mortar round, silent, clean, final. Not a suggestion, not a warning, a fact. And in that moment, everything inside her went still. She looked at the map again, Falcon Spire to the west. Convoy route carving east through open desert. The ravine, the one she flagged to Rourke yesterday, was exactly where the message pointed. She read the words twice, then a third time. She wasn't wrong. She wasn't overthinking. She was right. Her fingers moved fast, calculating elevation, line of sight angles, wind vectors. She opened a coded channel on the Spectralink, one not officially recognized in any briefing room. She didn't plan a counterattack. She didn't pretend to be a strategist, just a patch, a simple, efficient change to save lives. Obsidian 9 acknowledged. Recommend shifting Overwatch 200 m northwest. Establish secondary high-angle support. Clear loss into null wind. Then, she hit send. Back at Fort Ashara. The air was thick with heat and suspicion, and rumors move faster than sandstorms. The first whisper came during PT. Lex Morrow, the team's spotter, leaned over to another operator, grinning. Doc was down at the range again last night. Saw her pop 4 steel at 100 meters with the VX sidearm. The reply came with a snort. Maybe she thinks she's her brother. Another chuckle, then silence. As Aerin walked past, at Chow, the mood shifted. Not hostile, but watchful. She felt it in every half-glance, every halted conversation, the quiet calculation in their eyes. She wasn't invisible anymore, but she wasn't seen either. Not the right way. By sundown, the rumors had reached Rourke. He didn't shout, didn't storm into the medic's bay. Instead, the order came quietly, effective immediately. Specialist Voss is restricted from all live fire ranges. Any further unauthorized training will trigger formal reassignment. She read the email in silence, then stood in the center of her room, caught between fury and heartbreak. The rifle her brother once trained her on. Forbidden. The warning she'd tried to give. Ignored. The truth she saw. Now a liability. But worst of all, the mission was still scheduled. The convoy was still moving, and no one, not one single soul, was doing anything about the ravine. She looked back at the SpectraLink screen. No new messages. Just a soft green pulse at the corner. Waiting. 0600 hours. Falcon Spire. The mission began like any other. Convoy formation locked. Comm frequencies clean. And the Overwatch team Chief Arden Trace and Sergeant Lex Morrow already en route to the ridge. They didn't know. They couldn't. They were walking straight into it. Back at Fort Ashara, the morning routine was humming like clockwork. Aerin Voss stood by the medical prep station, checking her trauma kits. That's all they expected her to be ready to catch the broken pieces. Not stop the shattering. But her gut wouldn't stop twisting. She glanced at the wall monitor still displaying the mission overlay, the route, the ridgeline, and Nullwind Ravine. Just off-center, like a shadow no one wanted to see. Her pulse ticked faster. She could hear her brother's voice again. You don't wait for permission to prevent a mistake. You prevent it, or you own it. Up on Falcon Spire, Trace and Morrow were settling into position. The Brimstone Mk.9 rested on its bipod, cold and flawless. Lex scanned with binos, voice low over comms. Ghost to base, position secured, clear skies, visibility optimal. And then the sky cracked. Not a warning shot, not a misfire. A direct hit mortar shell impacting 15 meters behind their perch. A storm of shrapnel ripped through rock and wind and silence. Trace went down instantly. Blood sprayed the scope. The Brimstone clattered down the slope like a fallen idol. Ghost is down, Ghost is hit. Brimstone lost. I repeat, we lost the Brimstone. Morrow's voice, usually calm, playful, fractured into chaos, taking fire from the ravine. They flanked us through the fucking ravine back at base. The ops tent lit up with voices. Overlap, panic, static. And above it all, confusion. Commander Rourke's voice cut in, sharp as a blade. Lock down that position. Get reinforcements up the ridge now. But they all knew. The nearest QRF was 40 minutes out, and the convoy 13 minutes away from the kill zone. Infirmary comms picked up the broadcast. Aerin heard every word. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a theory anymore. It wasn't a hunch. This was happening. Everything she warned them about, every line of her secret map. Every line in the Obsidian message was now tearing through her team in real time. She dropped the bandages, grabbed her go-kit, and sprinted. At the command center tent, Rourke was hunched over the sand table. Voice terse. Call the gunships. I want overwatch from the air. Get confirmation of Trace's condition. But the gunships were grounded in a dust squall, and Trace still bleeding out on the ridge. Aerin burst through the flap. "Sir." Her voice shook, not from fear, but urgency. "I'm volunteering to take Trace's position." Everyone in the room froze. Someone actually laughed, but Rourke didn't. He looked at her like he was staring at a child who just offered to lift a tank. "Specialist Voss," he said slowly. "We are not in a classroom scenario. You are a medic, not a marksman, not a sniper, not authorized for weapons you've only read about. Sir Brimstone is in place. It's sighted. I know the physics. I've trained for this. The firing window 200 meters is exposed and live. The convoy's headed straight into it, and you want me to let you take the shot?" he asked. Almost amused. "No, sir," she said. "You already made your decision." Her voice steadied. "I'm not asking anymore." Commander Rourke didn't shout, didn't argue. He simply lowered his eyes and said, "Absolutely not. That's an order." And Aerin Voss nodded. "Understood, sir." Then turned and walked straight out of the command tent. But she didn't head for the infirmary. She walked toward her quarters, toward the ridge, toward history. The 27 meters between the command tent and her room weren't just steps. They were a lifetime. Every moment she'd been overlooked, every whispered comment, every door quietly closed behind rank and protocol. They fell away. Because now it wasn't about proving anything. It was about saving them, all of them. Inside her quarters, Aerin moved like a machine. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She opened the hidden compartment beneath her bunk. Her hands touched the velvet-lined case. Inside her personal optics kit, calibrated by hand, custom wind charts, pressure-treated gloves, and in the lining, a metal tag etched with 2 words, "Trace Logic," her brother's call sign. She slid the gloves on, zipped her trauma kit tight. This wasn't just defiance. This was preparation. This was purpose. Outside, the storm hadn't broken yet, but the air was electric, tinged with static and the promise of reckoning. She moved fast, keeping her head down, took a maintenance vehicle and unmarked desert transport. No markings, no comms, just grit and silence, and the sound of her own breath, anchoring her. By the time she reached the foothills of Falcon Spire, the gunfire was no longer distant, it was alive. The crack of M4s, the shriek of enemy rounds bouncing off stone, the sharp, panicked breath of someone bleeding. She moved low and fast, her boots finding purchase on loose shale. At the top of the ridge, she saw them Lex Morrow huddled behind a scatter of jagged rock, eyes wide, rifle low, and Trace Chief Arden Trace slumped over, his right arm soaked in blood, and beside them, the Brimstone, half buried in dust, silent, waiting. She didn't speak. She moved, dropped beside Trace, her hands working before Morrow could even protest. Tourniquet, pressure dressing, painkillers from her kit. "Stay with me, Chief," she whispered. "You're not done yet." Then she stood, eyes on the rifle, the one no one had let her touch. Lex's voice cracked. "Doc, what the hell are you?" But he froze, because the way she dropped into the prone, the way her fingers slid under the trigger guard, the way she settled her cheek against the stock like it was an extension of her breath. He knew. This wasn't a guess. This was muscle memory. This was bloodline. This was Aerin Voss. She peered through the scope, and there they were, enemy fighters, moving through Nullwind Ravine, just like she warned, just like no one listened. Her finger steadied on the trigger, wind left to right. 7 knots, drop 18 inches at 1950 meters, 1 breath in, hold, find the space between the beats, squeeze. The Brimstone Mk.9 roared, and the ridge went silent. A single enemy dropped, clean, final, then another, each round a scalpel, each shot a sentence rewritten, and behind her, Lex could barely speak. "Doc, what the hell was that?" She didn't answer. No need. She was already scanning for the next target. Because the truth wasn't just in the blood. It was in the barrel, in the rhythm, in the impossible calm of someone who wasn't supposed to be here but was born for exactly this moment. The ridge was silent. Smoke drifted through the air like ghosts without names. Spent brass cooled in the dust. The Brimstone's barrel still steamed faintly, the scent of cordite clinging to the rock. Aerin Voss lay behind the rifle, half medic, half myth. Her hands, stained with blood and gunpowder, shook with exhaustion, but her voice, when it finally came through comms, was steady. Convoy, this is Ridge Overwatch. Threat neutralized. Continue through the corridor. You're clear. Back at Fort Ashara. The command tent was chaos. Convoy lead's voice cracked over the line. We're taking scatter fire, but the main positions are down. Whatever Overwatch team you've got up there, they're surgical. Commander Rourke stood frozen, his eyes locked on the map. Falcon Spire wasn't supposed to be manned. The Brimstone wasn't supposed to be active. And the last person he saw heading that direction was the medic he'd just reprimanded. Then the second voice came through. Lex Morrow, breathless, raw. Sir, it's Voss. Doc's on the ridge. She's the one holding the line. Silence, not confusion, not denial, just recognition. Rourke closed his eyes. The system he trusted, the one built on lanes, titles, boundaries, had just been rewritten by the one person it tried to silence. Minutes later, the thunder of inbound rotor blades cut through the desert. A black Warden-class Chinook descended on the ridge. It wasn't backup, it was judgment. Commander Rourke stepped off first. No aides, no sidearms, no orders. Just a commander walking through the dust toward the soldier who disobeyed him and saved his entire team. He stopped 3 paces from her. Her body was rigid, still at prone, but she turned to meet his gaze. I gave you an order, he said quietly. Aerin nodded. I know. He looked down at the Brimstone, then at the 10 spent casings beside her elbow, then at the blood on her gloves, Arden Trace's blood. Then, finally, at her eyes. You should have been court-martialed for this. Yes, sir, but the truth is, you should have been on that ridge from the start. Before he could say more, another figure stepped from the chopper, a woman in a deep gray coat. No unit patch. Her voice was calm. Exacting, Specialist Voss. I've read the after-action logs. 12 confirmed eliminations, 0 civilian loss, convoy intact. She walked closer, face unreadable, then stopped. You must be Trace Logic's sister. Aerin's breath caught. The name, the one no one dared speak out loud, hung in the air like smoke. He taught me the grass blade crosswind method, the woman added softly. Did he ever show you that one tears welled in Aerin's eyes? But her voice was clear. He did. That was all the confirmation the woman needed. She turned to Rourke. This isn't an insubordination case. It's a case study in what we almost lost. Then to Aerin. You've rewritten more than a mission today. You've redefined capability. Effective immediately, you're assigned dual-role combat medic and tactical support sniper. You'll train openly this time. As the chopper lifted, the desert wind returned. Aerin stood alone on the ridge she wasn't supposed to be on, behind the rifle she was never supposed to touch, after saving people who never believed she could. And somewhere in the wind, she swore she heard her brother's voice again. Precision is what remains when chaos takes everything else.